So come on up. We have the Director of Partnerships at Dispatch Labs in the Bureau, Jake, and I apologize, Jake, I'm not gonna even, Kuczeruk, I meant to ask you before, I love it. So everybody please give this final panel a warm round of applause.
Hello. Testing. The arsonist has appreciated. How no, Brown? All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Woo! All right, well, I am excited about this panel. For those of you who don't know, this is a panel that really talks about blockchain as a monetary transaction for commerce. So what we're going to really do today is go into blockchain, go into fashion, and more importantly, how the two are working together. So for those of you who don't know or are new to blockchain, it's essentially a distributed ledger. So a shared database that everybody participating in a network can all see the same thing. The best way I break it down is it's almost like a Google Sheets doc in edit-only mode, where you have to kind of agree to make a change on the spreadsheet. But of course, if everyone's seeing the same information, this brings a lot of security, transparency into what's happening in the network. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce tonight our three panelists. The first one is, of course, Karen Su, the founder of BlockchainIntel, the co-founder of Blockchain for Women. Next up is John Connors, the founder of Blockchain for Ecology, which is an industry think tank using distributed ledger technology to restore in the Earth's ecological systems. And then finally, we have the amazing Olga Mack. She's actually the one who got me my gig working at Founders Institute, but she is VP of Strategy for Quantstamp, which is a smart contract auditing platform for blockchains. She's also an adjunct professor at Berkeley, working on a new book around blockchain technologies. Now, I guess to start things off with the panel, this is obviously a very important technology. Everybody from De Beers to Alibaba to Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy are now leveraging blockchain technologies. Why is it valuable? It helps reduce costs, reduce environmental impact, less paperwork. You can trace items throughout the entire supply chain, managing stocks, transparency amongst vendors and suppliers, and of course, protecting IP. So my question for the panel is, how does blockchain do this?
So I'll start with two things. One is protecting your designs. So what it does is it actually stores securely in this distributed ledger, like I just described, your ideas. So you can go back to this, prove that you were the one that created these designs and no one else. That's the first thing. Second thing is, how does the blockchain help you? It helps you make more money. So for those of you who, how many of you are trying to sell your work internationally? Okay, so a few of you. Or hope to internationally. Okay, where are you? So the blockchain, especially cryptocurrency, reduces all those fees. It means you, as the designer, as the company, gets money faster, and you get your funds faster, and you don't have to deal with credit card issues. You don't have to deal with foreign transaction fees, and that's because this currency allows you to do this. The blockchain and this network allows you to do that without having to go through all these extra middlemen, which take out at each step of the way all these fees, which means taking money away from you.
Excellent. And needless to say, when you're settling in a neutral currency, if instead of dollars to yen or whatever it is, that can help reduce the impact of currency fluctuations, ultimately saving hundreds of millions of dollars as currencies do fluctuate.
Could I answer?
Go for it, John.
From the ecosystem impact perspective, it's kind of like, close to the mic, sure. From an ecosystem impact perspective, I think we're all aware of the impact that the fashion industry has on Earth's ecosystems. At this moment in time, it's pretty atrocious, with full respect for everybody in the room. Blockchain opens up the possibility to track ecological activities and positive and beneficial ecological impact, like climate beneficial wool from fiber shed, Imagine wearing a wool beanie made by North Face, which is actually in production, that actually takes carbon out of the atmosphere and puts it in the soil. You can track that carbon positive activity, or carbon negative if you're talking about from the air, and on the blockchain in a way where consumers can be empowered to pay more money for a beanie that actually has the potential to reverse climate change. So it opens up, it makes the invisible visible, and opens up the possibility for transformative markets that we haven't yet to see in fashion today.
Thanks, John. The $1 million question here is, how will blockchain transform fashion?
So I'll take a stab at it. We work with many projects, and I can kind of see trends. And a few millennials ago, I had a fashion startup, so I think I understand this ecosystem just a little bit. So a couple of things. The expedited supply chain will definitely affect fashion. What we've seen historically is that the fashion cycles go a lot quicker, and we all talk about how annoying, impactful that may be. So my prediction, when you lubricate whatever it is now, it will go a lot quicker as well. So the fast cycles will be even faster. I would say that's probably one of the things that will happen. Another thing that this technology will enable is a better tracking of IP, because it is effectively a big giant table that is really good at keeping track of all kinds of things, including intellectual property. So you see what this enables. Is that the sign that I talk too much? What you see is that it enables a couple of things. One, it allows people to collaborate. And what you see is this technology allows collaboration on an unprecedented scale. So there is a startup in New York called Dada.nyc, and I really love that startup. If you go there, what they do is that they allow collaborations of artists from 153 countries in one place. And they keep track of who is contributing and how much, and so they can tell that Olga did like 0.01% of this massive artwork, for example. And so if this artwork is eventually monetized, Olga is presumably entitled to the portion of payment. That is exciting in and of itself, right? Because now we can kind of figure out Olga's contribution and automatically give her payments. But what I actually, as somebody who is a trained artist, I've been trained in drawing, in painting, and in sculpture. What I found really exciting was the art that is produced. When you have people from 153 countries get together and collaborate, you see art forms that never happened before. It is effectively Renaissance, where you see technology, society come together and collaborate in an unprecedented way. So those are some of the examples. So you have payments, you have different cycles. You also see creative opportunity to create fashion and art in an unprecedented way.
Really well said, Olga. I'll give another ecological example on the collaboration side. There's a blockchain collaboration tool called Dashboard Earth, dashboard.earth if you want to check it out. And they're connecting, consumers who are ecologically active, like picking up trash on the beach and wherever you are, with products and services in the fashion world that are ecologically positive, like Adidas, who's making sneakers out of recycled plastic from the oceans themselves. So you have a hyper-targeted capabilities, and you can gamify and offer incentives for people to do ecologically positive activities and end up getting points towards purchasing amazing products like Adidas is making.
So one of the things that likely will happen, and this is a trend we've seen in industry, is a definition of luxury, right? What has been luxury before, the big shiny objects of unknown origin, has been changing. The luxury today has a very different definition, and the luxury tomorrow will have very different definition, because by the time the item will get to me and I scan the AR code, I will know a lot about it. Has it been made of slave labor? Where was it made? What are the materials? How was it transported? Whole kinds of things that we can have, that we can know about objects, the history, the craftsmanship, right? That's what, if you are a small designer label and you talk about craftsmanship, now you can talk about craftsmanship in a very different way, in a more credible, trustful way.
Yeah, and you know, for what we're doing is seeing supply chains now leverage QR codes, NFC chips. So those actually kind of working at the ground level, clearing, you know, fashion or other products through customs, just can simply scan something with their phone and have a full record of the product as it goes from initial manufacturing to compliance checks, the entire full supply chain process. Now, let's name drop a little bit. What projects are doing blockchain right in fashion? What are some good examples of real developments in the fashion space?
So I've worked with a few different startups in this area. One is a jewelry company, and they're using the blockchain to record the unique pieces of jewelry that have been created by this designer and make sure that there isn't any fakes, there isn't any copies that are out there, and really ensure that this designer gets the full value of the work that she's produced. So it's a way of recording, okay, this is unique, this is authentic, and this is one of a kind. And that plays into what you're talking about in terms of supply chain, because you know all the materials that went into that, but you also know who created it. Another company I'm working with is doing shoe design and ensuring that the shoes that go out into the market are also authentic and can be traced back to the original designer, and creating a VR-like experience around it. So it's combining some aspects of virtual reality and experiencing that brand and that unique brand, along with ensuring that the quality and also the authenticity of the shoe is still there.
Can you name the company?
Oh yeah.
NDAs.
So I'll give you a slightly different example. How many people play video games? I'm only raising my hand, not because I actually don't, but I'm like modeling the behavior. You know, this is how you raise your hand. So apparently a lot of people are playing video games and they buy items, including fashion items, in video games. They give them superpowers and all kinds of, I'm talking about stuff that I've never experienced before. So if you play video games and I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't. But what I do know is that a lot of luxury items are increasing. Historic luxury items are digitized, unique items, like a Coco Chanel bag that is original, for example, or a statue from Greece that is you know, priceless, or Notre Dame. What's inside, clearly priceless and hard to restore. So what has increasingly happened, remember when we started having internet and Google was digitizing libraries. Remember that? Anybody old enough to remember? I remember that. But and remember how controversial that was? Google would go into libraries and put all the pages, and there was all this copyright issues around it. I was in law school when that was happening, but that's all I talked about. But what's happening now is effectively that on steroids. You see companies going and governments figuring out that they have unique assets, historic, cultural, fashion, whatever, art assets. They're digitized, there's an exact digital copy of it that could be used in virtual worlds. So you may or may not be owning the original Coco Chanel bag, but you may own one in the virtual world. There may be like 20 copies of it or 5 copies of it, and so that becomes an intrinsically valuable asset that you can display or use as superpowers. And so the physical, so we tend to think of kind of from to converting to digital, and there's a whole new way to do it and create economies in a way that is not in the physical world that that your fashion designs could have.
Who's seen Ready Player One? No one else? Okay, a couple of people. Yeah, we're now reaching a point where companies like Decentraland are actually building, virtual worlds. And on the blockchain technology, you can own a piece of that. You have, the way to think of it is, you can have your house, you can have your clothes, you can have everything in a virtual reality. And blockchain is something that's actually starting to accelerate the development.
Right, and for the first time, so when we talk about copies on the internet, we talk about something that could be easily copied, right? Relatively quickly. You can have a lot of digital copies. What blockchain allows you to do is to create unique copies that you and only you own, and nobody can copy. So you effectively, in the digital world, experience ownership in the same way that I experience ownership of this bracelet that I'm not going to share with any one of you, no matter how much you ask.
Excellent. I got a John question here. So as the founder of Blockchain for Ecology, Needless to say, how can crypto kind of make a positive impact on reversing and reducing environmental impact, especially within fashion?
Yeah, well, as we spoke before, making the invisible visible. If farmers are growing their wool, that's funny, grazing their sheep in a way that reduces carbon from the atmosphere and putting it into the soil, they can actually make money or make tokens with a company called Nori, Nori.com. And Nori is basically the people's carbon market. A lot of the cool thing about the activism in the blockchain space is we don't wait for nation-state actors or large beyond nation-state organizations to create carbon markets. We just do it ourselves. And we have the technology with which to validate carbon sequestration and pay out accordingly for it, and not have to wait for the taxation that occurs on that level. So we can incentivize ecologically positive growing, ecologically positive activities in a way that we never could prior.
Outside of Nori, who else is really using blockchain for impact on the environmental scale, especially in fashion?
Regen Network is probably my favorite. They're all about regenerating. Regen.network is that website. They're restoring Earth's ecosystems from both the agricultural side as well as the fiber production side in a way that I think is unprecedented in the industry.
So to add to the question around crypto and how crypto can make your life better, how many of you would like to make more money? Okay. How many of you see credit card transactions or other forms of payment taking away your earnings? Okay, so those of you who deal with credit cards, okay, know they suck, all right? If you have any kind of fraud or anything going on, all that comes back to you and you have to pay it out. On top of that, you have to pay this nasty transaction fee every time. And that's like 3% or more, right? Including all the other fees you have to deal with. Well, if you were to accept payment in crypto and use that as a rail, so to speak, you would get most of that. Okay, you would pay a very small transaction fee, and then you can immediately convert it into US dollars, right? For another very small transaction fee compared to what credit card companies take from you in their transaction fees, as well as in the fees having to deal with fraud and other things, right? Clawbacks or whatever, returns. So that's a big reason why cryptocurrency helps a lot, and especially in the international payments, right? And we have to deal with not only these credit card transaction fees, you're dealing with additional foreign transaction fees. And even if you deal with bank payments, like somebody sending you some kind of payment over wire, that sucks too. I mean, I deal with it all the time. You have to wait weeks, and then you're always sitting there wondering, did it come in? Did it not come in? You know, did I get the check in the mail? Did I not get the check in the mail? You know, did somebody steal it? I have no idea. But with cryptocurrency, you know immediately. I mean, it happens within seconds. And then you can do what you want with it. Convert it into USD very easily and without the high fees.
Karen, you opened the Pandora's box here of what's happening internationally. So I know you work with Bitfund and my buddy Dean. What can the U.S. economy learn from what's happening abroad right now, especially as it pertains to fashion?
Sure. So companies like Bitfund. So Bitfund is an investment company in South Africa. And what they focus on is trust, actually. So not only are they taking people's money and investing it, but they're making sure that the money they're taking and then the money they're spending is not being used or linked to any kind of scams, right? So how many of you heard of any kind of scams recently related to cryptocurrency? Okay, a few of you, right? And so quite a few people I talk to are afraid of that. They're like, why do I want to deal with this? It could be scammy. And I say, well, actually, with cryptocurrency, you know if there's a scam because you can trace it all back, just like we can trace who the original designer of a particular item is. You could trace back who the scammer is. And we provide technology to do that, and that's what we've been doing with companies like Bitfund, is showing who are the scammers that are linked to the cryptocurrency that you're dealing with. You can't do this with cash. When you walk into the store, you have no idea if the dollar bill that you were given was linked to a drug trade. Absolutely no idea, right? I mean, there's no way of knowing that. I mean, you're gonna sniff it and see if there's cocaine on it? I mean, really? Not all of us are that talented. But with cryptocurrency, you can. You can trace that all back. There are tools to do that. I mean, that is why it is so much easier to trust. You have to know what you're doing, though, and that's why companies like ours are happy to explain and show you, and there's a lot of material out there that we can talk about later, but just a lot of resources out there showing you how this happens. But it's digital. It's all trackable.
Excellent. And where crypto is today, as you imagine, a lot of people are kind of holding it as a speculative investment. You know, companies like Flexer are out there saying, hey, we'll help you use crypto to pay for a cup of coffee. Do you really see this catching on? You know, if it's been kind of an investment, why or why not?
So in any kind of evolution, the first step is speculation, right? The first step is, you know, people getting in and seeing if this is going to work for them. So that is the phase that we've been through. Now, having said that, what's very clear is, and this is because I've been working in this space for over 3 years now, companies around the world are using cryptocurrency for payment. Why? Because it makes sense, right? I mean, you don't have to pay those high fees. You get the money right away. You know, it just makes sense, right? You have to know, yes, who you're dealing with, but you have to know who you're dealing with in any situation, whether you have a credit card or cash or anything, right? So you got to know who you're doing, but they're the tools, like I just talked about, that tell you how to find who you're dealing with and what's going on and how you can achieve that trust. So the world is changing, and more people I see faster than I actually thought. You know, I was actually very skeptical. When I first started this, I was like, crypto. Whatever. Why would I ever use this? And now I have to say, I am amazed by the number of people that I deal with, the number of companies I deal with, the number of the individuals who say, yeah, I have crypto. It makes sense because it's easy to use. I got it on my phone. It's just like using anything else. Plus, I can use it anywhere in the world. You know, I travel quite a bit for work, for pleasure. Every time I go, I am just like floored by how much I have to pay in stupid credit card fees and other fees that, you know, at the bank, you know, changing foreign exchange order. I'm just like, what? We still have to do this? Come on. There's got to be a better way, and there is. And so that's why so many people are adopting this. Of course, we're still early days, right? I'm not going to fool you and say everyone in the world is doing this, but I am impressed by how many more people are doing this than, say, just, you know, a few years ago.
So I used to work with Visa. It is true that credit card companies make quite a lot of money from the foreign transaction fees. That is definitely a money maker. I'm going to probably frustrate you, Jake, and talk about blockchain that may or may not be crypto and may or may not have token. We had a little bit of a conversation, but you see this technology being embraced by big companies, and they are using, you know, in blockchain you have many choices of various platforms, and not all of them involve tokens or cryptocurrencies of any kind. And so there is a sort of separate, and whether or not you consider that a blockchain or a more evolved distributed database, we will not have that discussion. But let's just say you have many, as with any technology, you have many options. I admittedly still think that, you know, as exciting as crypto is, I think it is very experimental to some extent. You see a lot of it is going on in the research in universities. You see that UI is not there yet. You hear of stories of money disappear. So if all of this doesn't make you excited to own a wallet, I mean, that just kind of makes sense, right? That does. Not all of us are early adopters. I tend to be. That's why I've been in technology for as long as I have. I like taking risks there, but not everybody does. That is not to say that you can't use this technology without using crypto to achieve the goals of authenticity, transparency, micropayments, radical collaboration, very exciting peer-to-peer functionality, and many companies from IBM to Amazon to Oracle to Microsoft to Visa are doing it. They are also exploring crypto as well, and I think that is a sign that that will happen at some point. But the blockchain as technology is definitely something that you can incorporate in whatever fashion adventure that you have with or without crypto.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Are there any fashion retailers taking crypto en masse right now in some large percentage that we're aware of?
Well, so the Overstock.com had adventure which there's also a challenge with regulations. So, and I believe that is one of the reasons they stopped. But I'm just speculating.
And then Amazon has been for a long time now. So I have friends who literally take their Bitcoin and they get rewards, they exchange it for Amazon rewards, and then they pay for their groceries that way. So, oh yes, so in addition to Bitcoin, right, they've added a few more coins recently. Yes, Ethereum and some others. But Amazon has been doing this for a long time, and a lot of people have been using that to pay for their groceries.
And you know, if Amazon is doing it, they're onto something. I mean, remember, these are the guys, the reason why we don't have Toys R Us around, and Barnes & Noble. And then I had a great, we televised, I had a WTF moment in DC recently when I saw an Amazon bookstore. I stared at it for a really long time, and I was like, wow, you guys just killed all the bookstores that I love. Like, I used to take my dates to bookstores. So like bookstores have a very special place in my books. These guys killed all the bookstores, and then Toys R Us, that was really special when I was growing up. And I was like, okay, well, technology is evolving, I guess that's cool. But then they discovered this concept of physical bookstore, and they think it's cool. So Amazon is doing things right, I guess, to some extent, for their business. And so if they are discovering crypto and actively researching and experimenting with it, I would go out on a limb to say that that's probably an important technology.
All right, well, we're running short on time, but what is your we have a couple more questions, but what is your 5-year prediction for crypto and retail, for blockchain and retail, and where do you really see mass adoption happening? Is it Facebook's efforts in the space, Amazon's, JP Morgan's? Obviously a lot of people are jumping in, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'd say first is, going back to what Olga is saying, using the blockchain as a record of who the original designer is. I mean, that is immensely useful. Everyone can look into it, see that, not only who's the original designer, but all the materials that we talked about before that were used to create that item. That's going to be immensely important because it's not just important to designers, it's important to the consumers. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is, I do think for cryptocurrency, international payments is where fashion will just hit it off, because face it, I mean, we live in a global world. Like I was just talking to some guy, I was traveling to Beijing. I got this jacket in Beijing. I don't know how many people have told me, I love your jacket. I'm like, sorry, I got it over there. I don't know how to get over here. But I know that if we figure out a way, to pay for things in a much easier way, in a much frictionless way, using things like cryptocurrency, this would be something that we would be able to share more. And those are, my two things.
I'll take a slightly different approach. I think at first you'll see blockchain to be all about efficiencies, faster, bigger, cheaper, that type of stuff, and that's kind of on trend historically. That's going to be the wave of where we start. Where we will end is actually a much more interesting place, and that is we will solve problems that we deem unsolvable today, like, for example, environmental issues. I'll give you an example. So my first job in technology was when Yahoo acquired Flickr. Flickr, for anybody who doesn't know, is a sharing app of pictures. I still use it. I love it. I think it's an amazing technology. It was created by a bunch of PhDs at Berkeley. I was a student at Berkeley at the time when that was happening. I was in law school. And so my job was to work with a bunch of what I call rocket scientists and to help them get a handle on the IP for the company. And so we were sitting in this big round table, and we were thinking about sort of what is possible with if you have this thing called smartphone with the cloud and the tracking of location. And we were throwing crazy ideas. And 20 years later, they became Instacart, Facebook, Twitter. And all of them, every single one of them, every single crazy idea became true. But what's remarkable to me is when I look back, my job, I was a law student. My job was to basically transcribe all those ideas, which I did very well because I'm an amazing note taker. And so I was talking to an outside counsel who said, Olga, are any of them worth patenting? And I'm like, like on the one hand, amazing, on the other hand, crazy. You tell me how you decide. I'm not sure if we're gonna see any or all of them happen, but it was definitely a good intellectual exercise to think about it. Mind-blowing, 15 years later, 20 years later, they're all true. So we have the same thing with blockchain. We're talking about a lot of mind-blowing things, and if you ask me how do you actually put it together to make it work, that's kind of where mind-blowing stops. I don't know, and most people don't know, but there's a lot of amazing people who work at it, and I guarantee that every idea that you heard today and much, much more will be true.
I'd love to encourage, beautiful people change the world. I hate to say it, everybody loves beautiful people. So when fashion grasps on to this concept that we can actually reverse climate change, like legit, take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it in the soil through regular biological processes, when fashionistas and Instagram influencers that are gorgeous, that we're all dying over and drooling over, are spreading this messaging, and blockchain is being the vehicle with which we can validate it and know that the metrics, the ecologically positive metrics, aren't BS, that they're legit, then we're going to legitimately reverse climate change collectively and together, powered by blockchain.
We got one more question. What is one piece of knowledge everyone should know about blockchain tech? And what are some valuable resources for somebody new to blockchain if they want to learn about it? One at a time. John, you're first. Olga, you're first.
Okay, so you can. My one advice is that you can only learn by doing. I can theoretically tell you about blockchain, blocks, and chains, and sound like I'm, somebody from some, game or something. But really, you just need to try it. You need to learn and you need to figure it out. So learn by doing. But two resources, if you're kind of in the beginning, I like two books that are written for public consumption, not for rocket scientists. One called Blockchain Revolution, and the other one called Truth Machines. They give you kind of the value and what's possible, and will tickle your imagination, and hopefully inspire you to play with it.
So I'm kind of an audio and interactive learner, so I liked looking at a lot of videos on YouTube, and there's quite a few pundits out there. But the other source is, and I'll make this plug for Blockchain by Women, and this is open to men and women, but it's an organization that meets on a monthly basis. We have panels. Olga was in our last panel talking about blockchain use cases. Our next one is on investing. We have another one on privacy and security coming up. But they're monthly get-togethers, monthly meetups where people can hear from experts or hear from people in the space, talk about their experiences on specific topics, and then also meet other people who are either in the industry or wanting to get into the industry. So like what we were saying, I'm also a big believer in learning by doing. So if you want to get involved, this is a great place to hear people talk about their projects, give feedback, maybe participate in some of these projects by being an end user or a beta tester, or just hearing about what people are doing so you can see if you want to join a company.
Can I add just one more before? Honestly, get a little crypto. I'm not telling you, definitely not telling you take your old savings and buy it up. Do not do that. That would be stupid, and I'm not in a position to give you any advice, including non-investment advice. But if you buy like a little bit and have a little bit of skin in the game and go through the very painful process of it's going to be painful. It's going to be so, I take bark and I stream videos under the bridge. And if there is a glitch, I get nervous, okay? But I remember when the internet just arrived and it took 5 minutes for the picture of a freaking cat to come up. I was patient. I was down to wait for that cat because I knew the good things are coming, okay? We are trained to be very quick now, and blockchain just isn't. Crypto just isn't. So you're gonna be in this painful place that is very technical and very slow and not intuitive and not a beautiful UI, but do persist and get a friend who's done it before, you will bump like never before. But you will learn so much, and you will see the turbulence, and it will just help you learn to have just a little bit of skin in the game.
And John, what are some great resources? And some advice.
Firstly, I'm less excited about the cryptocurrency aspect and more excited about the blockchain aspect. So I'll double down on Olga's perspective, Blockchain Revolution by Alex Sapscott and Don Tapscott. It really gives a great business resource of it. Then if you want to go a little deeper to understand it a little more fluently, Khan Academy has some really cute little videos on it. And then thirdly, I'll back up what you were saying, Karen, was that if learn by doing. So if you go through those first two resources and you have this vision for new ecologically positive fashion line, go to an hackathon and build something kick-ass with some smart friends of yours.
Yeah, and I'll second Truth Machine. That's Vigma and Casey, right? Yeah, Michael Casey, MIT Media Lab guy. That's a little bit more advanced. I'd say the
It's
best.
not that advanced.
All right, what I would-
It's written for public consumption. In fact, I was talking to an audience like this, and I recommended those two books, and the gentleman raised his hand in the back, and it was Michael himself. He said, "Thank you for recommending my book."
He's
He
the dude.
occasionally shows up to places like this, and but this book is very well written, very entertaining, and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, but at the very, very basic, there's two things I'll recommend. All of this blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin, all of it started with the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. This anonymous guy named Satoshi, or female or whoever, wrote basically, he kind of wrote this white paper, which is a guidebook that goes into blockchain, goes into crypto, and it's something on, you can read it online, bitcoin.org, but reading that is the first thing that ever really broke crypto mainstream, really got it into the zeitgeist. So you can, I think bitcoin.org might still have it up. Otherwise, for those who are still a little bit on the fence, Wired actually did a great video on YouTube that walks through explaining blockchain and crypto to different age groups. So it starts off with a toddler, goes to like a teenager, and keeps getting more and more complex. And honestly, I think that's one of the easiest ways. It's got 15 minutes. But we are out of time, so I'd like to get a round of applause for our amazing panelists, obviously, tonight, and thank them for coming out. We will all